Welcome everyone to another episode of Beyond 60 podcast, where we explore the ins and outs of retirement, and more importantly, how to thrive in this exciting new chapter of life. Today we're diving into a topic that honestly pops up in nearly every conversation I have about retirement planning. It's that familiar whisper of worry, sometimes a shout, that says, "Do I really have enough?" You know that feeling, right?
Uh-huh.
It's universal, really. And to help us navigate these thoughts and feelings, I'm so pleased to have a wonderful guest with me today, Mark. Mark, it's great to have you. You bring such a thoughtful, almost, I want to say, a very real perspective to these discussions.
Well, Sarah, it's great to be here, and real is certainly one way to put it. I think a lot of us, myself included, lie awake sometimes wondering, can I actually do this? Is it enough? I mean, you hear so much out there, especially when you hit, say, 64, like the person we're talking about today, and you start looking at your savings, and it feels like a lot, and then it feels like not enough all at the same time. It's a funny contradiction.
Mm-hmm. Oh, absolutely, Mark. It really is. And that feeling, that sense of, is this truly feasible? That's our first big hurdle, isn't it? Because on one hand, you have folks, like a gentleman I spoke with just last month in Florida, who found himself at 64 with a paid-off home, around $250,000 saved, and a decent Social Security projection. And he was just beside himself with worry, asking, is this enough? Am I screwed? It's a very common initial reaction. He mentioned, I just realized time ran out and life circumstances did not allow me to save. And that sentiment, that regret, is so palpable for so many.
Yeah, I can totally relate to that. My brother-in-law was just telling me he's a couple years younger than me, and he's looking at his numbers, and even though he's worked hard his whole life, he feels like he's got only this much. And then you see some comments online, people saying things like, only $250K? That's rich. I only have a little over 1,000, so I plan on working till I die. It really puts things into perspective, doesn't it? It makes you wonder if your worries are even, valid when you hear someone saying they have zero and are planning an early exit.
Mm-hmm. It does, Mark. It really, really does. And it's so important to remember that all worries are valid because they're your worries. But it's also true that perspective can be a powerful thing. A relative of mine in Nashville, she retired a few years ago with significantly less than our example, around $104,000 to her name. And she's living, as she puts it, better than I did 20 years ago. She emphasized how important it was to just clear debt and live simply. And then there's another story I heard from a woman in Arizona who said, "You are better off than a lot of people, and Social Security is not going away." Her point was that for many, having a paid-off home and some savings already puts them heads and shoulders above the average American. In fact, statistically, only about 3.2% of people retire with $1 million or more in savings. So most people are in a similar boat or with less. It truly is about managing expectations and finding joy in the current lifestyle. It's not about being rich, it's about being resourceful. Someone even said, "Congratulations, you're in good shape. You own your own home and no mortgage. Save dollars, live below your means, and supplement your SS with a job that doesn't count against your entitlement." It just underscores the possibilities.
That's a really hopeful way to look at it, Sarah. I mean, it's easy to get caught up in the what ifs, but hearing about folks who are making it work with less or even just embracing a simpler approach, it definitely shifts something in your mind. My wife, she always says, you'll be fine. Be frugal and you'll be surprised at how many luxury items you're accustomed to don't have the same relevance. I guess, what seemed like a necessity before suddenly isn't. Someone even said, I'm pretty content on $2,400 a month with no savings. So it's all relative. It just shows it's really about what you need.
Exactly. And that leads us so naturally into our next big topic, which for many is deeply intertwined with that initial financial anxiety. The idea of leaving an inheritance, especially the family home. I hear this so often, Mark, this desire to provide for our children, even well into their adulthood.
Oh, that's a big one. I mean, my initial thought always is to try and make things easier for my daughter. I want to leave her something, like this gentleman. He has this paid off house of $700,000, and his instinct is to hold on to it specifically to pass it down. But then you hear people say things like, your daughter has time. You don't. Unless there is an underlying reason she can't care for herself, worry about yourself, not your daughter. It's a really tough pill to swallow, isn't it? This whole idea of prioritizing yourself. I even heard about someone whose ex-in-laws asked me to cash in my 401k to pay for MIL's nursing home care. Not my ex, me. I refused. It makes you realize you really do have to put yourself first.
It is. It truly is. And it brings up a lot of emotions, doesn't it? I recently spoke with a woman from rural Ohio who put it so eloquently. She said, as a daughter with a retired father, I agree. I would rather my dad retire sooner and spend all his money being happy in his golden years than have to think about him pinching pennies, worrying about money, and working longer than he needed just to leave me a house. I would not want the house if that was the way.
Mm-hmm.
It really changes the conversation, doesn't it? It's not just about the asset. It's about the legacy of your well-being. Someone else shared, your wealth is tied up in your house. Don't do anything for a while, but think hard about how your life is going later.
Wow, that's really powerful. I hadn't thought about it that way from the child's perspective. My wife read something online and it really stuck with me, this old saying, are you flying coach so your kids can fly first class? It's a bit of a provocative question, but it gets you thinking about where your priorities truly lie in these later years. It's like, how do I put this? You want to give them everything, but at what cost to your own peace of mind? I mean, someone even pointed out, my daughter was floating through life, doing nothing. She had gotten married, and both were living at my house for nothing. I asked them to leave, and they wouldn't, so my ex paid to move them to Florida. To make a long story short, my daughter went to nursing school, became a nurse, and has made over 6 figures for many years. It really highlights that sometimes necessity is the mother of invention for them, too.
Precisely, Mark. And it leads us to a really important realization. The things that are most valuable often cannot be bought. Think about it. Happiness, health, positivity, and that feeling of contentment. A mentor of mine from the Midwest, a wonderful woman, always says, long walks at sunset are free. Cutting out processed foods saves money and increases health. Thrifted items save the landfills from being used. Everything has an upside. Find the joy in your lifestyle. And she's absolutely right. She shared a heartbreaking story about her own father who, in his final days was so worried about the money being spent on his health care. And she said, I don't care about the cars, the house, the money. I wish I had him back, sighs softly. It really underscores that human connection and your presence are often the greatest gifts. Our job isn't to leave them a material fortune, but to live our own lives fully, joyfully, and to strive not to be a burden. As another person eloquently put it, it's nice to leave your daughter a house, but best thing you can do for her is tell her to start investing for her retirement now and help her grow.
That hits home, Sarah. I mean, I can honestly say my own daughter, she probably wouldn't want to live in the house she grew up in anyway, let alone after she was married. After this conversation, I'm actually feeling a little lighter about the whole inheritance idea. It's a good reminder that while the gesture is kind, my own, retirement happiness takes precedent, as the original poster you mentioned later realized after some thought, which is a great step.
That's a fantastic segue, Mark, because it brings us right to one of the most practical and frequently discussed solutions, downsizing, or in some cases, outright selling the house. For someone with a paid-off $700,000 home, this can be a game changer.
Yeah, I see that mentioned a lot. It makes a ton of sense on paper. My initial thought is, well, I love where I live, it's by the sea, Cape Cod area sounds lovely, doesn't it? But then the reality hits. The inventory is ridiculously low where I live. I could sell here, make bank, and move to a cheaper area, but I love where I live. So there's that emotional attachment versus the financial practicality. Someone even made a good point. I'd also say that the fact you have a paid-off home and $250,000 saved, that you are probably way ahead of the average American at your age. Your net worth is nearly $1 million. So many have it worse. Which, wow, when you put it like that, my net worth is higher than I thought. But it still doesn't solve the "where do I live now" question if you sell.
That's the push and pull, isn't it? It's a very common sentiment. People get so attached to their communities, their neighbors, their routines. But then you hear success stories that really highlight the upside. A woman I spoke with recently, living in a suburban area, she sold her $700,000 home and bought something for about $480,000. And she told me, money in the bank, family actually is happy to inherit new place instead of large house. She said it brought her so much peace of mind. It's about freeing up that equity and reducing ongoing expenses like maintenance, property taxes, and insurance, which, as many have pointed out, can be quite significant, even on a paid-off home. Someone suggested, sell the house, buy a cheaper one, and invest the difference. Then he should be fine. And another, a longtime probate worker, said very bluntly, I guarantee you that your daughter will sell the house when you're gone. You need to do that now. Downsize to half the cost, and you'll more than double your retirement funds. It's a tough but often very practical suggestion.
Right, because even if the mortgage is gone, you're still paying a lot just to have the house. I remember a friend of mine down in Florida, he said, sell that house and get a smaller, cheaper one. Less maintenance, less taxes, less bills. And he's right, there's a certain freedom in that. Plus, the money you free up, you can invest it. It's like having a whole new chunk of your retirement fund, isn't it? It can actually make your total saved amount look much more impressive. You don't have $250K saved. You have $950K saved, as someone else put it, if you count the house equity.
It absolutely is. And that leads us to a really key aspect of making that money work for you: thoughtful investments and financial management. This is where that $250K in savings or whatever amount you manage to free up from downsizing can really start to make a difference.
Yeah, this is where my eyes glaze over a bit sometimes, to be honest. Laughs. You hear about the medical system will get it all, and that always makes me nervous. Or people worried about having too much saved to go on disability, which, is a whole other issue. But it makes you think, how do you protect what you have and make it grow without being too aggressive? I've heard about people who invested thousands by recommendation of financial planners and lost it all. That's a real fear.
That's a very common question, Mark. And it's true. Healthcare costs are a huge concern, and we'll definitely touch on that more later. But when it comes to that nest egg, the consensus is clear. You need to put that money to work. I had a wonderful conversation with someone from Texas just last year, and they said, if you have $250K invested, you can safely draw $1,000 a month. And that's a conservative estimate. The key is to shift from just saving to investing for income. Many suggest looking at things like preferred stocks, high dividend stocks, or broad market index funds like the S&P 500. The idea is to generate annual income without touching the principal. One person shared their experience by saying, I retired 8 years ago with $300K in an IRA. I take out $2K a month, and it hardly went down over that time. I do have a pension SSI also. It just shows that with a plan, it's very doable.
So it's not just sitting in a regular savings account then.
Mm-hmm.
I hear about this 4% rule too. My wife brought that up the other day. It sounds almost too simple. You can safely draw 4% of your investment annually. Or even invested properly, you can conservatively generate 5% annually in income off that much. 250K times 5% equals 12,500 annual divided by 12 months would conservatively put $1041 a month into your pocket without you touching principal.
It's a widely discussed guideline, Mark, and it provides a great starting point for planning. For $250,000, that's about $10,000 a year, or a little over $800 a month, which, combined with your Social Security, really starts to add up. The most crucial step is to sit down with a financial advisor. They can help you create a personalized plan to maximize your income while preserving your capital. As someone sagely put it, your total portfolio's $950K with house included, so you're all set to. And another person said, put the $250K in S&P 500 index funds. When you do retire, you have $2,200 plus your retirement, and you can always get a home equity line of credit if things get bad for $300,000. That should hold you off, and she still gets a house. It's about building in those layers of security.
That makes sense. It's about having a strategy, not just hoping for the best. And, the Social Security aspect of this is huge. For many, it's the bedrock of their retirement income.
It really is, Mark. Social Security plays a pivotal role for almost everyone I speak with. For instance, the original person we're discussing is looking at around $2,200 a month from Social Security, and that's a significant piece of the puzzle. But then the question always comes up, when is the best time to start taking it?
Right. You hear so much conflicting advice. Some people say, take your SS now. I did at 62 because, they've done the math, and for them, the break-even point to wait until 70 just seems too far off, and leave 6 years of SSA payments on the table, bad idea. But then others say if you can continue working, wait until 70 to collect SS. It may make a large difference. A buddy of mine from my old golf club, he waited until 70, and he says his monthly check is considerably higher now, and it really pays off in the long run.
It really is about individual circumstances, Mark. There's no single right answer for everyone. The maximum benefit does increase significantly for each year you delay claiming beyond your full retirement age, up to age 70. But as you rightly pointed out, life happens. A woman I spoke with recently, a retired nurse from the Pacific Northwest, she said, I just retired this month and can happily live on Social Security alone, $2,400 a month. No debt, 2 cars paid off, and home paid off. Her point was that, for her, the peace of mind of just having that guaranteed income, regardless of other factors, was paramount. She stressed how her parents made it on much, much, much less. They passed soon after 2020, but made it to their early 90s. So it's definitely doable for many.
That's pretty amazing, actually, to live comfortably just on Social Security. I mean, it goes back to that idea of simplifying, right? If you don't have all these huge expenses, suddenly that monthly Social Security check starts to look a lot more substantial. Someone even mentioned SSA is not going away, which is reassuring because you do hear the doomsayers sometimes.
Absolutely. And that leads us to another key strategy, Mark, that many people are embracing to make their retirement funds last. Continuing to work, either full-time for a bit longer or transitioning to part-time work.
This is a big one. I know so many folks who, even if they've hit their full retirement age, they just keep going. A friend of mine, a real go-getter, he said he plans on working till I die. Not because he has to, but because he genuinely enjoys it and it gives him a purpose. But then you hear people like the comment about, I only have a little over 1,000, so I plan on working till I die, and that feels like a necessity, not a choice. And some even get worried. Don't retire, you will be dead 6 months after. That's a morbid thought, but it implies work keeps you going.
That distinction between choice and necessity is so important, Mark. And what I've seen is that even if it feels like a necessity at first, people often find immense satisfaction in continuing to contribute. I had a conversation with a gentleman from the Carolinas last spring who retired at 65 but kept working part-time. He said, I worked until I was 72, never took SS until I was forced to. It added more to my monthly check. And he told me, working PT, you will have plenty of time for hobbies and interests in retirement. He found that balance of staying engaged, earning a bit extra, and having the freedom to pursue his passions. Another person I spoke with, a 67-year-old woman, retired 3 years ago with $104K, house payment as her only debt, and she says, I'm living better than I did 20 years ago. She attributes a lot of that to her husband's contribution to household bills, but also to her low needs and expectations.
So it's not about being stuck in a full-time grind, then. It's more like
dipping your toes in?
Exactly, it can be. A woman I know, a wonderfully positive person from a small town in Pennsylvania, she said you can always do PT retail, tutoring, pet sitting, lots of options. She actually enjoys her part-time work because it's a way to connect with people, stay active, and bring in fun money without the pressure of a full-time career. It's about finding something that truly suits your lifestyle in retirement, not just any job. Many people even take up substitute teaching or working at local golf courses. It's less about the big earnings and more about supplemental income and staying connected. Someone else mentioned, I substitute now and then and dog sit. So there are many ways to make it work.
That makes a lot of sense. It sounds less daunting when you think about it that way. It's like you're in control of how much or how little you work.
Precisely. Now, we've touched on this a bit already, but we absolutely have to dive deeper into one of the biggest anxieties for retirees, healthcare costs, long-term care, and understanding Medicare. It's a concern that, frankly, can keep anyone up at night, regardless of their savings.
Oh man, this one is huge. I mean, my initial reaction is always just like, the medical system will get it all. You hear stories, right? About how quickly everything can be depleted. My wife and I just talked about this the other night. What if one of us gets dementia or has a stroke? It's terrifying to think about those kinds of long-term care costs. I mean, I heard someone mention 400 plus bucks a day until you die for a nursing home. That's a lot. And then someone else says, it makes a huge difference in the US. She will most likely be relying on Medicare, and they do not cover long-term care. If the house is in her name, she will have to sell it, and the $15K a month a friend of mine is being charged for memory care will go through that $700 pretty quickly.
It absolutely is, Mark, and it's a very real concern for so many. A gentleman I spoke with recently, a retired veteran, shared his personal experience saying, I'm 60 and pretty much spent my life paying my own medical costs. I will just keep working. At least to have a job I can do from home. It's something to be grateful for. Now, while working to cover costs is one approach, there are also strategic ways to think about this. For example, Medicare Part B, which many people will be on, does have a monthly premium, around $180 or so currently. And then you have supplemental insurance options, which can help cover gaps. The key is to understand what's available and plan. As one comment noted, Medicare takes care of a ton of things. A supplemental insurance is around $200 or so a month.
So it's not just a bottomless pit then. There are ways to cushion the blow, so to speak?
That's right. While the costs for long-term care can be staggering, particularly for memory care facilities that a friend of mine recently navigated for a relative, there are planning tools. For instance, some people explore options like placing their home into a trust. This can be a complex area, and it's essential to talk to an estate planning attorney who specializes in this. They can help you understand options like a Medicaid asset protection trust and the look-back periods for asset transfers. The goal isn't to avoid paying your fair share, but to ensure that if catastrophic care is needed, your family isn't entirely bankrupted by it. Someone I spoke with, whose parents lived into their 90s, shared how they spent hundreds of thousands on nursing homes. They lamented that their parents insisted it wasn't necessary because they were healthy, only to face huge bills later. It's a stark reminder that even if you're healthy now, things can change quickly. As someone wisely put it, it's not about worry, it's about being prepared.
Preparation. That's the key word, isn't it? I guess it's easy to get overwhelmed and just shut down, but really, you need to lean into it and understand the landscape.
Exactly. And that spirit of preparation brings us to another fundamental aspect of retirement: budgeting and living frugally. Because ultimately, your ability to make it hinges on how much you spend versus how much you have coming in.
Yeah, this one hits pretty close to home. I mean, my wife and I have started looking at our monthly expenses, and it's a bit of an eye-opener. You think you know where your money goes, but then you actually sit down and see it on paper. It's a whole different story. What are the big things people tend to overlook when they start budgeting for retirement. I mean, someone even said, I don't know what you spend on house maintenance, insurance, and taxes, but you might be better off selling your house when the time comes and living in a rental.
That's a fantastic question, Mark. What I found from talking to people across the country is that the biggest surprises often come from those seemingly fixed costs that don't go away just because you stop working. Things like property taxes, homeowners insurance, and ongoing home maintenance. A gentleman I spoke with who lives in a similar situation to our example, he realized that even with no mortgage, those 3 items alone could add up to a significant monthly outlay. So it's not just about what you spend on fun, but what your fixed costs truly are. They did mention their property taxes are $2,000 a year on a $700K house, which is remarkably low. But even so, they are costs.
Property taxes, that's a good point. Ours aren't too bad here, but I know in some areas they can be astronomical. And maintenance, yeah, that roof isn't getting any younger, is it?
No, it certainly isn't. But on the flip side, what many retirees find, and this is where the frugal living comes in, is that their discretionary spending often naturally decreases. A friend of mine who retired a few years ago, she said, I spend less in retirement, but don't have expensive hobbies. Living very simply isn't a sacrifice for me. And then another person I spoke with, a very content individual, said, I'm pretty content on $2,400 a month with no savings. So it's all relative. Their point was that if you can adjust your lifestyle, you might find you need less than you thought. Our original person, mentioned spending $10,000 a year on international travel, and while that's wonderful, they're also considering home exchange to make it more cost-effective. It's about aligning your desires with your reality. Someone shared how her mother, before retiring on $2,000 per month pension, made herself live on that income for 18 months. She did great. She didn't need a new car, clothes, etc. She ended up retiring early at 62 and hasn't touched her investments except for the down payment on the house we bought together. That's a real success story in disciplined budgeting.
That makes sense. It's about being mindful. It's like you don't need to buy a new car every few years or eat out every night. My dad, bless his heart, he lives off Social Security watching TV, and he's totally content. And as someone commented, living frugally is a fun and healthy sport. I mean, when you put it like that, it sounds almost like liberating.
It absolutely can be, Mark. It really can be. And speaking of creative solutions to manage expenses and bring in a little extra income, one idea that comes up quite a bit, especially for those with a bit of extra space, is renting out a room or having a roommate.
Oh, that one. That one always gives me pause. I've heard the horror stories. I mean, don't rent it unless you want no peace for the rest of your life. I was a landlord for years. That kind of comment makes you think twice, Or even never sublet a room unless you welcome squatters. Squatters have more rights than you. It sounds like a lot of potential headaches.
It's true, Mark. There can be headaches with any rental situation, and certainly landlord-tenant laws vary widely by state and even county, so due diligence is key. But what I also hear very frequently are incredibly positive experiences. A woman I spoke with recently, she rents out a room to a graduate student, and she said, I have shared my house with a student recently from Taiwan who is very quiet and clean, worked away 1 week and home 1 week, was great and made $220 per week extra. She found it quite lovely, actually. And another person mentioned, I would pay so much to have a trustworthy person take care of my cats while away. So there's a real demand for reliable, well-vetted renters. One person even shared a great story about a renter who installed a new garage door, and I just paid for the door and other parts. He also fixed kitchen faucets and light fixtures, would clean the min-split AC. He helped a fixed driveway. I made sure to never raise his rent. So good tenants are out there.
That's a good point. Like, if you find the right person, it could be a win-win.
Exactly. Many people find success by being very careful with screening, perhaps using a realtor who specializes in rentals, as one listener suggested. And for our original poster, Living on Cape Cod, they mentioned, I live in an area with high need for J1 student rentals made OCT, So thought when I get older, I can do that. Might be nice to have a young person in the house. So thinking about those seasonal opportunities, or even just having someone young around, can be a real benefit beyond just the income. One person even suggested, why wait till you're older? Start now so you can get that extra income now. It's about exploring what works for you and your comfort level. There's also the idea of a throuple, not in a romantic sense, of course, but like the Golden Girls, where you share your home with other retirees for companionship and shared expenses.
That's definitely something to consider. It opens up possibilities. And speaking of where you live, that ties right into our final big discussion point, the impact of your cost of living and potentially the idea of changing your location.
It absolutely does, Mark, because for many, especially those in high cost of living areas, this can be the single biggest lever they can pull to stretch their retirement funds. Our original poster, for example, is in a very high demand area on Cape Cod, and they said the inventory is ridiculously low where I live. I could sell here, make bank, and move to a cheaper area, but I love where I live. That emotional tie, again, is so strong.
That's exactly it. It's like you've built your life there, your connections, and the thought of leaving is just daunting. But then you hear people like that comment about if you're open to moving out from your current location, you could sell your house, buy a cheaper property in an up-and-coming MCall-LCall area. It really makes you pause, doesn't it? Because the numbers could be significant. Someone even suggested sell the house, buy something smaller that you can take care of as you age, invest it in a mutual fund.
They truly could be. I had a conversation with a gentleman last year who actually moved from a very expensive city to a much smaller, quieter town. He said maybe moving to a lower cost of living would be good longer term for her as well. And what he found was that not only were his property taxes and general expenses dramatically lower, but his overall quality of life improved because he wasn't constantly stressed about money. And then there's the international option, which some people are seriously considering. I've heard some intriguing stories.
Like what? I've seen comments about that. Someone said, retire overseas, problem solved, or even specifically mentioned, Portugal, I need beach and solitude. I'd love Sweden or Denmark. Another one mentioned, that's $5 million in South Africa. Your house will probably get you enough to buy a substantial chunk of house here. Our cost of living is substantially less. Or Vietnam, Thailand. It sounds adventurous, and someone suggested move to Hanoi and live life king size.
It does sound adventurous, doesn't it? And for some, it's absolutely the right path. They find their retirement dollars stretch so much further, and they embrace a completely new culture. But it's not for everyone, and it requires a deep dive into visa requirements, healthcare systems abroad, and personal comfort with change. But it does highlight the fact that the problem isn't your savings, but your main problem is your cost of living there. It's a fundamental truth for many. And sometimes even just finding a slightly less expensive area nearby can make a world of difference without feeling like you're giving up everything you love. Our original poster did mention their current town on Cape Cod has low taxes due to tourism revenue, which is a great asset. So it's all about finding that balance that suits your personal values and financial needs. It's a very real choice. I could sell here, make bank, and move to a cheaper area, but I love where I live. It's a personal call.
That's a good reminder. It's not necessarily an all or nothing thing. You can make adjustments without totally uprooting your life if you don't want to. I'm starting to see that. The original poster even acknowledged in a later comment, my daughter and I had preliminary chats and agree she won't likely want the house and my retirement happiness takes precedent. I will stay as long as I can, downsize when the housing market opens up, and take it day by day. That's a really mature approach.
And that, Mark, is truly the heart of what we talk about on Beyond 60 podcast. It's not about fearing the future. It's about understanding your options, making informed choices, and finding a path that brings you peace and joy in your later years. Mark, as we wrap up today's conversation, what's one or two tangible steps or shifts in mindset that you're feeling more confident about taking after our discussion?
That's a good question. I think first, I'm definitely going to have a more open conversation with my daughter about the house. I mean, my thought was to preserve it for her, but if she'd rather I used the equity to be comfortable, that changes things. And second, I'm going to really sit down and do that budget, not just monthly expenses, but those big, unpredictable ones like property taxes and maintenance. And I'm going to look into getting that $250,000 invested properly. It feels less scary now just having talked through it. I mean, someone even said it's not about worry, it's about being prepared. That really resonated.
That's wonderful to hear, Mark. Truly, those are fantastic, actionable steps. It's all about empowerment, isn't it? And remembering that this isn't a solitary journey. There are so many people out there navigating similar questions and finding creative, fulfilling ways to live their best lives beyond 60. A person I know, a truly resilient spirit, faced unexpected challenges at 65, but now says, I'm 76 now and have more plus an annuity I bought myself. It's a testament to planning and perseverance. To close us out today, I want to share a thought from a wise person I know, someone who has lived a long and very full life. She always says, the things that are most valuable cannot be bought. Happiness, health, positivity, and the feeling of contentment. Thank you, Mark, for such an insightful and honest conversation. And to all of you listening, thank you for joining us on Beyond 60 Podcast. Remember, your golden years are waiting to be lived fully. Until next time, take good care.